By baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and America's favorite car.
They go together in the good old USA. Baseball and hot dogs, apple pie and Chevrolet.
Makes sense to me.
Baseball, hot dogs.
The smell of freshly baked apple pie that has been left on the windowsill fills the air outside. The children are playing on swings within the confines of a white picket fence, while Dad starts up the barbecue and opens a glass bottle of Coca-Cola. This is Americana, or at least one version of it. Paris, Texas follows Travis, who's been wandering alone for the past 4 years. He is soon reconnected with his family after he left without telling anyone where he was going. Throughout his journey, Travis stops upon visions of a lost America. A Chevy from the 50s abandoned in the desert. Motels lit up by neon lighting. Vast landscapes that have yet to be ruined by man-made machinery and buildings. A look back at a simpler America, an America many dream about finding. The visions of America and the Americana style in Paris, Texas are immersive as they are seen through the eyes of German director Wim Wenders, who acts as an outsider looking in at America. I can relate to Wenders in this sense, as growing up in Ireland, there is a cultural dominance from America through TV and film. I essentially grew up with American culture due to the ease of accessibility to these forms of media. This had an obvious impact on my upbringing and my views of American culture, creating a longing for the lives presented in this media, for a life that seemed just a little more perfect than my reality in Ireland, generating my version of the American dream. Wenders grew up in post-war Germany. During this period, American culture and the cultural imperialism of Hollywood had dominance over Germany's media. Wenders' upbringing through this media had an influence on his work, which is seen in many of his films which often take place on the road, with the road genre often being seen as an American genre. Wenders went on a 2-month road trip across the American West. He drove through Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California in 1983 to scout locations for Paris, Texas. Wenders came across Americana on his road trip, from roadside attractions to cowboys to large neon road signs and the large expanses of the West. Along Wenders' journey, he discovered the range of colors that represented America and the West most accurately. Colors that came to light were red, white, and blue, the colors of America, juxtaposed with the greens of nature. This color scheme was seen throughout Paris, Texas, and became a theme within the film. Red, white, and blue in a scene represents the American dream, or at least Travis's version of an ideal life.
What's out there?
Versus the green, which represents absolute reality. A key scene where these themes are featured most prominently is during the 8mm projection of the family's past. While watching the film, they're all sitting in the room, which is covered in red, white, and blue. They're looking into the past, the perfect life. However, in the background, the kitchen is drenched in green neon light. Reality is right behind Travis, creeping up on him, and he's going to have to face it. This green representing reality is seen most notably when Travis enters the peep show room to see Jane. As he opens the door, a green light spills out of the room onto his face. Travis is literally facing reality. Americana is something that has been prevalent for decades, largely thanks to the Ronald Reagan era.
Then tell me, future boy, who's president of the United States in 1985?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan? The actor? Then who's vice president? Jerry Lewis?
Much of Reagan's presidency was based around restorative nostalgia. The major political powers at this time, Reagan and the New Right, used the 1950s nostalgia to, in a way, brainwash people by romanticizing a model version of America.
I would like to be president, because I would like to see this country become once again a country where a little 6-year-old girl can grow up knowing the same freedom that I knew when I was 6 years old, growing up in America.
My personal experience with nostalgia is likely influenced by the Reagan era. I developed a nostalgia for a different time through watching American films from the 80s, where small-town America was portrayed as a perfect life, which has been highlighted by Michael Dwyer that the notion that 1980s America romanticized the 1950s is as close to a consensus opinion as one could imagine on the subject of 20th century American culture. My yearning for the past grew even stronger when I discovered the show Mad Men. Mad Men was a term coined in the 50s for men that worked in the advertising industry on Madison Avenue. It is set in 1960s America, and there's a pivotal episode in the show talking about nostalgia.
Nostalgia. It's delicate, but potent.
Don Draper uses a carousel slide projector with his family images to promote a feeling of nostalgia with instances of the American dream to sell the product. This feeling of nostalgia when showing the images of his all-American home life is similar to the 8mm projection scene in Paris, Texas, which is used to ignite feelings of nostalgia in Travis.
In Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It goes backwards, forwards. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
By the end of this scene, Travis's nostalgia has been ignited.
Do you remember her?
Not really, only from the little movie we saw.
Nostalgia is habitual in all the characters apart from Hunter. He doesn't really remember much of his younger childhood and can also recognize that the past is the past and people are no longer who they were.
Yeah, that's not her.
What do you mean?
That's only her in a movie. A long time ago.
Whereas it's the adults who fantasize about another time, making up ideas in their head of what a perfect life is like, how it used to be, a kind of fantasy that seems reserved for the mind of a young child. Yet Paris, Texas turns this on its head.
Do you mind if I sit down?
No. Can I tell you something?
In the Peep Show, Jane acts as a catalyst for a version of Travis's American dream. The Peep Show rooms are like little peeks into stereotypical Americana scenes. The poolside, the hotel room, the little cafe. In these scenes, Jane is living inside Travis's imagination of the American dream. It's evident from the work that Wim Wenders put into Paris, Texas, that Americana would play a huge part in the film. From the main story, a man wandering in the deserts of the West, with a place in mind but no set time to get there, and the nostalgia that creeps up on him when he's reunited with his family, to the spectacle of American culture on the road. Americana seeps through every crevice in Paris, Texas. When I first saw Paris, Texas, I not only fell in love with the story and the characters, but also the idea of life on the road in America, an Americana culture that Travis witnesses while traveling through the country.
The whole American people live on the road. The society is on the road.
Ultimately, in my own way, I developed a kind of nostalgia for the life Travis saw on the road. Small town America, places untouched by accelerationism, a simple life in a past perpetuated to sell products and ideals through rose-tinted glasses, nostalgia for something that isn't real.